Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT podcast, our weekly show in which I'm joined by some fantastic guests and Mike to discuss the week's events. How are you doing, Mike? Are you well, son? It's always a pleasure to have you on. I just can't help that, little one there. I haven't unmuted you, so I didn't hear anything.
How many times are you going to use that introduction? I'm like, he's going to say, and Mike.
It bothers you. And I mean, if you've ever been in a playground, you remember the whole advice of, if you ignore them, they'll stop doing it.
I have clearly not learned that lesson, even though I preach it to just about everybody else, as you know.
Exactly. I'm also joined by Adam from the Football Terrace and, of course, the Fifth Official. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm very, very good.
Good. There's a lot of positivity, which is weird considering what we're going to be talking about, which is, I suppose.
That'll change, I'm sure.
It'll change. It'll change very soon. And finally, it's really good to have him back on the show. It's been a little bit of a while, but it's Kris from Burkout Wonderland. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Yeah, all sort of things North London aside, but yeah, not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Yes, not too shabby. I mean, I've had a fantastic day talking about a player that I know that you have absolutely no doubt in your mind is never going to be setting foot inside the Emirates in an Arsenal shirt for sure. And Eduardo Camavinga, I'm sure we'll mention him a little bit later on. But yes, it's been.
How was your date the other night?
Yes, my date. It was fine, thanks.
Did G find out?
Yeah, she liked the photo, and she liked. I think she liked your tweet as well. So yeah. Yes. Thanks for that. The amount of people have sent me messages sarcastically saying "nice shirt, wink face" was absolutely ridiculous. So there you go. Trust me to post anything about my own social life on social media. Anyway, congratulations to everyone, obviously, that's been joining us throughout the day. You've suffered through some ridiculous content, of course, and I'm glad that you're joining us for this evening. So keep the content coming. Obviously, we'll get to questions a little bit later on in today's show. So if you have anything burning, not personal, just questions, that you'd like to ask us, then make sure you save it until the end of the show. To kick off, obviously, we usually do these talking about the game. We're not really doing that format today because of how little importance, I suppose, the games remaining have, and more to talk about how we feel about Arsenal right now. Mike, I am going to start with you, son. Your opinion's kind of changed throughout the season, I suppose, and obviously we've gone back and forth on Arteta a bit. I think you've leaned towards more kind of not necessarily full on out, but during the Christmas period, it was definitely very tricky, and you were finding it difficult to stay in, I suppose. Do you feel like, and I saw Judges put this up the other day, do you feel like Arteta is the luckiest manager alive to still have a job right now?
Well, I think he took the job with the full knowledge that it would take, multiple loss of bowel control on the desk of Stan Kroenke for him to get sacked. I mean, and that's not going to happen. So the Arteta thing is at this point mostly just I have no control over the situation. So what's the use in getting all bent out of shape over it? I mean, there are things that he's done that I agree with. There are reasons that he's, not that we've underperformed that I genuinely don't attribute to being down to him. But objectively speaking and looking at it, he continues to do some of the things that he was doing in October, November, December, and throughout. And the results haven't been there. I'm not calling for his head at this point, but the personnel decisions are the one thing that he seems to not be able to get out of his way. So, as far as how you're feeling about the last few games, I've seen people, why are you celebrating when we scored the first goal yesterday? It's just a meaningless tie against West Brom. Well, F that. I'm celebrating when my team scores. Okay. Yeah. I'm watching the game because I can't not. And so, I want us to win our last 3 games. I don't care if it ends us in that awful conference league. I just want us to win the games that are in front of us. So I'm sorry that I have such a bad habit. Arsenal Twitter.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the comments on some of the videos we're putting out, especially when I reacted to the game on Sunday straight afterwards, were very much like, I don't care. And I was saying about Spurs and the fact that we could still have a chance to overtake Spurs. And I was like, that's ingrained as me as an Arsenal fan to want to achieve to finish higher than them in the league. And whilst that's still possible, I will hope that Arsenal do it, and I'll back them to do it always. And it was really disheartening to see some comments going, I don't even care about Spurs, because it just gives me that sense of something being lost. I get that things are crap right now, and things are the worst in my lifetime of watching Arsenal that they've possibly been. But there's just, I don't know, Chris. I know, Chris, you're very obviously opinionated in regards to kind of the hatred towards Spurs, as we know. And I know that you've been brought up very much to dislike those guys with an absolute privilege almost. Does it fill you with a little bit of sadness when you see that kind of rhetoric from sections of the fan base to not care about that?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it goes a bit deeper than the Spurs rivalry. I think it's just like our fan base as a whole at the moment. I think we're all just very disenfranchised with what's going on at the club, both on and off the pitch, in terms of ownership, management, players, that just the whole thing. And I think there's just this kind of apathy of like, oh, well, who cares? Who cares if I think if we were fighting out for Spurs to finish above them in a place that meant we got something, i.e. European place, I think it would probably be a bit stronger. Because then it would be almost like we're denying them getting something. So there'd be that extra edge to it. Just simply finishing above them, like you, I was brought up on St Totteringham's Day, and we were we were lucky to have it kind of just every season. It's never not a thing. And in recent times that's changed. So I kind of get it. But at the same time, like you said, it's kind of sad when you look around and people just don't care. The only other thing, I guess, certainly from my point of view, and I'm sure Mike will agree with this one, the older you get, the more you realise that the younger generation don't care about the things us old folk do. So I think that kind of blends into it a little bit.
It applies to everybody but Tom. Tom's 26 going on 50, and I'm 48 going on 9.
Yes. There's one. Start tallying them up, guys, the amount of young jokes Mike makes throughout the show. Adam, as a fellow fetus, as Mike would call us, do you care? Does it bother you that others don't care necessarily?
I've never been called a fetus before.
At some point, I'm sure a doctor actually referred to you as that. But
yeah, true. But did I even exist at that moment? Anyway,
let's not get into a debate.
Do I care? Do I care that people don't care about finishing above Tottenham? No, because I think it speaks to football's global appeal. I think the fact that Arsenal is no longer just a London-based or North London-based club kind of means that was bound to happen at some point. And I think I've noticed a trend for a couple of years now that people don't really seem to care about rivalries almost, or especially geographical ones. So no, it doesn't necessarily bother me that people don't care about finishing above Tottenham. It worries me that people don't necessarily care about winning games or about games such as this, because there's still something to play for. Pride is still important to play for. So that kind of irks me a little bit more than finish or worrying about people not caring about finishing above Tottenham. But yeah, I think for myself, I definitely want to see Arsenal finish as high in the table as possible. I definitely want Mikel Arteta and the team to be able to go out of the season with some morale boost of sorts. So I think wins are still important, even if we're not necessarily playing for a place in Europe or for titles.
Yeah, it is. Maybe it's just me. I suppose that it is the kind of this inherently really kind of dislike of them and wanting to just see. And maybe it's also the psychological way of me justifying watching the rest of the games this season. It could just be that. Just really trying to convince myself to do these shows straight after every single game and continue writing about Arsenal. It's just the way it goes.
We do like an hour after the games, and we've been doing these open mic shows, which I've really enjoyed.
Yeah,
and they seem to coincide with some pretty good games that Arsenal were playing. Thursday, honestly, I felt ill physically, but mentally, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Like I just did not want to sit around and talk about Arsenal getting knocked out of the Europa League, and have to come up with content there. So, hats off to you for doing that, because
I did 4 shows in 24 hours of that loss. It was,
I did
it
all
was
of my
painful.
podcasting in one 8-hour megapod last weekend, and I haven't wanted to do it since.
I decided 3 days prior that I was going to do a show at 8 a.m. every day, and then that happened, and I was like, I'm not going to get up after this loss to do an 8 a.m. show, which has been an absolute killer. But we did it, and we've maintained it. But yeah, it's to be fair, the open mic shows that you've done, if you haven't checked it out at the Gooners Pod on Twitter and go onto the Gooners Podcast on your YouTube apps and wherever you're finding it, honestly, seeing the reactions of some of the fans has been great, obviously. I mean, and I always come back to the reaction of the fan that was on at the same time as Kevin Campbell, because his face just lights up and it's hilarious.
I actually met him and watched the first leg of the Europa League with him in Florida
really?
a week and a half ago. I met Aston, so the Gooner family keeps getting together and widening. But yeah, he drove down from Orlando to Sarasota, which is like a 2.5-hour drive, to watch the game with me.
Wow. Nice. So, yeah, it's great.
And he paid me. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't want to know what for. Moving quickly on, when it comes down to kind of where we sit now as a fan base and what we're expecting from where we go from here. I said earlier that this is kind of the lowest I've ever felt about Arsenal during my lifetime. And I know that Mike's already talked about being of an older generation and have experienced even lower times probably than this. But it does feel more so than then, because of the situation that we've got with the competitiveness in the league, with how the other teams around us spend, with how competitive they are and how much better they look than us, with the kind of the apprehension around the situation of the owners, with a feeling of hopelessness, I suppose is the right way to put it. Whereas previously, when Arsenal were at their low points, the league was still very much anyone could still win it. There's no oligarchs involved. There's no huge fees being paid for massive players constantly. There's no one that can come in and buy a team. So every season, whilst it wasn't necessarily a completely level playing field, it was nowhere near as sparse of a gap as it is now, I feel. So, Kris, is it for you? Do you see a light at the end of this very deep, dark tunnel? And do you see it coming sooner? Do you have any faith in the words that we keep hearing from our benevolent owners and from Arteta himself, saying that we need to be ruthless in the window and that he expects heavy backing and stuff like this? Does it fill you with any amount of hope, or is it just expecting more of the same?
Crikey, where do I even start with that one? The Arteta quotes worry me, because I sort of wonder whether it's a bit of a Hail Mary from the manager, it's almost a bit of a back me or sack me type of wording that he used after the game. I felt like the whole calling out Smith Rowe to improve his performances and, being, like you said, being ruthless with the squad, so on and so forth. It just sort of came out as a bit of a almost hold my hands up and go, well, I've tried my best, but the only way I'm going to get better and do things well is if you back me. Let's just skip over the fact that not 90%, that's harsh. 70% of the problems are as a result of some of his methods, in my opinion. But am I positive? I mean, I don't know. I think I try and think back to the last time I sort of felt this disengaged with the club, in terms of you never, like Mike said, you never don't want to be a part of the fan base. You never sort of step away, as it were. Arsenal's in your blood, that's it, and anybody who supports a football club will understand that. But there are times where you just think, oh God, we're hard to watch, and we are hard to watch on the football pitch at the moment. And the last time I probably felt like this was 94, 95, the back end of the Graham era, the step into the Rioch era. It was rough. I think we finished, I want to say 12th. I need to look that up, but I think it was 12th. We finished behind sort of such giants as QPR that season. And it was just thoroughly depressing. And the only thing that sort of kept you going was you thought, well, it can't really get much worse than this. And that's kind of a horrible way of looking at things. And I kind of feel like this Arsenal team is just, I sort of feel like we're a momentum team. And if we start well, we'll continue well. But my big concern really this summer in particular is I think we've got a lot of major surgery to do. And I'm not 100% sure that I can have full faith. Yeah, exactly. And we seem to have said it the last 3-4 summers, but I think this year above all else, because there's players that need to come back from loan, there's players that need to possibly go out on loan, there's players that we need to get shot of. I mean, let's not forget, Said Kolasinac at the moment is coming back in the summer. Think about that for a minute. So I just think there's so much to do. And you know, I've said 100 times on our pod and various other places I've been, I want to be wrong. I want Mikel Arteta to prove me wrong. I loved him as a player. I think he's got some very good ideas. But the longer this goes on, the more I just think he's a bit out of his depth right now. And that's what concerns me. And I know there's two managers out there that I personally would think would do a fantastic job, even with the squad we've got now. And I'm just a little bit worried that if they do throw the checkbook at Mikel Arteta, even if it is, you know, 40, 50 million as opposed to 150 million, I'm a little bit concerned about what he's going to spend that on. So I'm always optimistic. I try and keep positive, but my God, this season has tried my patience.
I feel like anyone listening is going to hunt me down if I don't ask what the two names are. Is one of them Gaultier by any chance?
Yes. One of them is definitely. And the other one is one you'll know well, a certain Spanish national team manager.
Mr. Enrique.
I just sort of feel that he'd be a really good fit. There's something about him, something about the way he speaks, his philosophy, the way he plays, the way I think his man management's really good. Gaultier is obviously one that I know well of, sort of following the French league and such like, and it's pretty much accepted that he is going to move on this summer when Lille probably win the title. So his stock's never been higher, but I kind of think that we'll end up sticking with Arteta, and in probable true Arsenal tradition, we'll probably stick with him. And if we start the season badly next year, we'll probably do exactly what we did with Emery and sack him in December and then waste another season. I really hope I'm wrong though.
Yeah, I agree with you. And
he would have gone on Friday morning if they were going to be getting rid of him. You'd think, right? I mean, because then the 3 games you put in a placeholder, you bring in who's the guy that used to always go to Chelsea for like 5 games at a time?
Avram Grant.
No, not him. The other one.
Who's hitting?
Yeah, who's hitting? You bring him in for 3 games and then see what happens from there. But they would have sacked him in the morning if they really were planning on getting rid of him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Do you think, Adam, that like there is any credence in the idea that it's worth persisting with Arteta after this season, in thinking that, because I mean, I've sat here with you before on shows, I've gone onto your show and I've sat here and I've defended Arteta this season a hell of a lot. I've kind of put my neck on the line quite a few times, and it has come back to bite me in the backside quite heavily. And obviously I put out a show after the game against Villarreal, basically saying that I think he should be sacked. And I was careful to use the word should, not in the case of that I want him necessarily to be sacked, but I felt that he should be sacked based upon what we've experienced and what has happened. That's not happening. And when I look at the team and I think about what does this actually, under the current regime, under what we've seen, what do I think needs to happen for this team to improve? And I think, honestly, we need the minimum of 5 upgrades to the starting 11 and then 2 backups to left back and goalkeeper. And I mean, now we could arguably need 6 starters if you include Leno in a player that we need to upgrade upon, which is becoming a real reality. If you read Chris Wheatley's article, supposedly he's on the list of players Arsenal are willing to sell. So is it the right decision to persist, to stay around? Because I've seen like positivity. I've seen the result against Spurs at home, Leicester away, Chelsea at home, even the wins against Leeds and West Brom where we blitzed them, the away leg against Slavia Prague. I've seen all this potential that's there. I can see where, as even Arteta described, where this team can bang, as he describes it. But do you trust that with backing and with more players that we can achieve what we've been lacking, and that key word being consistency?
Possibly. And the reason I say that, but I look at Arteta and I can't remember when it was, but he's spoken about the type of profile and the technical quality of players that need to come in. And I look at the players that he's done that with, and on paper, they look good. Arsenal have been crying out for a midfield enforcer in the mold of Thomas Partey for ages, absolutely ages. What does he do? He goes in and gets one. He knows that we needed a number 10 to maybe replace Ozil. He goes out to get Ødegaard, who is a hot prospect, been a wonder kid since the age of flipping 16. Willian, as much as you might love him, you might hate him, technically you would argue, or you would have argued, that he was a good signing, that coming off the back of what was probably his best and most consistent season for Chelsea. So in terms of the profile of players that Arteta goes for, I don't think you on paper could fault him for it. So I think if he continues in that vein, I think I'm excited about the type of players that we might go for or be in for. But as Kris kind of said, do I trust him or trust Arsenal's ability to get those players? I don't know. And I had a debate with my friends today about how you sell the Arsenal project to a player like Camavinga. I don't know how the hell you do that. You basically just say, hey, I'll make you the star of my team, give you as much money as you want, and you can leave whenever you want, maybe. Because I don't know how you sell that above Manchester United. I don't know how you sell that above City.
That's how I got my wife, Adam.
Like I literally don't know. So I do think that Mikel Arteta would be good at profiling the right type of players, but Arsenal as a project, I don't know how we attract those players.
Do you? Honest question, like the people that have been brought in and moved out, the player trading, I think has been genuinely quite good. It's the players that are on the team picking which ones are going to be actually on the pitch for games where he's suffered. Like everyone says I don't trust this summer. I actually am a little intrigued by this summer because there are players. The profile of Yves Bissouma, why would he not want to come to Arsenal? You know, he's not screaming out Champions League or nothing. He's a player who's on a team that's floundering, and this would be a step up for him. Maybe not the final step, but so I think I'm excited about the opportunity. I am banking on the Cronkies putting the money where their mouth is, at least about competition. They've got a lot of other things to make up for out of this whole mess that can't just be, put on the back burner by buying 4 players this summer. But I think our squad is going to be better than it was this year, next year. Whether he's the right guy to carry them over the line and continue with the project has me looking at who, are we hearing any kind of...
To play devil's advocate, though, wouldn't you say that our squad this year is better than it was last year, yet we finished lower? And
absolutely. And that brings in, look, if you're looking for a way of rationalizing it, and I've tried, and I've come up with it. Well, because, there are factors. I mean, look, COVID's a factor for everybody. I genuinely think the presence of Mesut Ozil the first half of the season as an agitator had massive damage to this club's psyche, and we saw an instant improvement when he left. Ending
that could even tweet, my God.
I do. I think that he had to deal with a split dressing room. I think that the players that are the future or should be the future of Arsenal, at least out loud, you're seeing nothing but falling in line behind Mikel Arteta at this point. Tierney seems to be, playing for the shirt, playing for the coach. Saka, I don't think would ever have a bad word to say about anybody. These guys, I don't see what happened with Emery happening with Arteta. Not yet. And so, the only thing that has to change is Arteta has to stop overthinking things and getting in his own way, as far as I'm concerned. And a few good luck things go our way. Maybe we don't have 97,000 VAR calls, for thumbnails being offside go against us next season. Who knows?
Yeah. I try and justify it. And I've looked at kind of their recruitment, and I've said that's what's been keeping me on board. That's what I've been bringing up time after time after time, is that this is the first last summer, where we identified 2 positions that we've been desperately crying out for huge improvement in. Our centre-back role, we're getting Gabriel, a great centre-back who I think has trailed off towards the end of this season. I think that's been more down to maybe the loss of David Luiz and the presence of Holding next to him than necessarily him solely in his performances. And Thomas Partey coming in, who, again, I don't want to keep bringing up, say, excuses as they're called, but has missed a lot of the season for injury during our worst period, which was the first half of the season, when we were then back with Granit Xhaka and Ceballos has been frankly awful this season. But I keep coming back to that point, Mike. I keep coming back to we are recruiting better, and that goes beyond just the Arteta period. Do you go back to the summer prior? You see Martinelli come in, you see Kieran Tierney come in, even David Luiz, I think you can look back on as an £8 million signing. He's probably justified that and more, to be honest, during his time here. Now, yes, he's made some mistakes and big ones, but I think that he's done enough to justify that move. I'd rather have had an Upamecano, don't get me wrong, but I think he's justified that signing when it happened. You then have to play devil's advocate and go beyond just saying that we've had a better squad this season and go, but is Edu as much worthy of praise for that recruitment as Arteta? And is Edu's presence under a new coach arguably going to bring that same positive recruitment trend with a coach that might be able to get even more from this squad? Kris, I'm going to let you tackle that idea. Does the presence of Edu cancel out the argument that Arteta is a good recruiter for the team?
I'm really not sure on this one, because the biggest problem you've got with the Edu situation is that he has backed Arteta so deep to the point where, I mean, he's almost sort of puppeting. You know, that everything is linked together between the two. He is the spokesman. He's carrying the can. And the problem for Edu is that if Arteta fails, I don't think he's going to sack himself, because why would you? It would have to be a decision from above Edu, and I'm not convinced. As much as I and I got a bit of stick for this the other day, but I stand by it. As much as I don't think the Cronkies are brilliant owners, I also don't think I think they could be a lot worse. Let's put it that way. The one thing they are is very business savvy, and they're very business sound, and they're not going to leave somebody in charge of their club day to day, particularly when they're not really in the UK very often. They're not going to leave the keys to the car to somebody who they don't think is doing a good job. So they obviously trust Edu, and that means that Edu has to trust Arteta because he's his man. So the idea that he would make the change and not fall on his own sword is a little bit worrying to me, because that essentially means you've got two people whose reputations kind of go side by side, and you've got two people that if one fails, they both kind of have to go, and that leaves us in a really sticky situation. What I'm really intrigued about this summer, as much as, and I do agree with what Adam said, I do agree with what Mike said. I do feel like some of the player turnover will be interesting, but what will be more interesting is these two new chaps coming on to the footballing board side of things. The names have completely escaped my brain. The guy from the Premier League, that's the Badger. And there's another chap, isn't there? Another guy coming onto the...
I haven't heard of anyone yet. I know they're looking to recruit more scouts. I don't know if you saw the article by The Guardian today, but the Arsenal have employed a headhunting program to find more scouts, even though we made 55 people
Just fire them all anyway. Yeah, great idea, guys. Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to fire you all and then find some new ones to replace you that we don't actually know.
Fire them justified by the pandemic, and then hire other people.
And then bring them in.
Justified by us sucking.
Basically, look out for Gunnosaurus and a suitcase at Paddington Station next year with a sort of who's who of guide to go around South America with. But that will be interesting. I think the Garlic appointment, just because he's from a football background. He's not. I think was he a lawyer? I think I'm right in saying when he was training, but he's from a football background, and he clearly knows. Oh, Tim Lewis. Garlic. Yeah, Tim Lewis is. Oh, it might actually be Tim Lewis. Might be getting the
Tim Lewis is a lawyer, so
with a football fan background, but
with a football fan background. So the two of those combined, I just wonder if that might bring about a bit of a change about how we do our business. Yes, we got players out the door in January, but some of them we had to pay off. I don't think we've got too many sellable assets in this club right now, so that's going to be a challenge.
Really? I think we have the most sellable assets we've had in a long time.
Sellable in terms of volume or value?
Value.
Sellable
that's my issue.
Of double-digit transfer fees that we can get for them. Not 80 million or 100 million type guys, but I mean we have more 20 to 30 million pound opportunities to unload.
20 to 30 million pound players.
I'm intrigued.
I'm more closer to 20 than 30, but Mainsley.
Watch this scale back.
20 quid.
Bellerin. Nelson, maybe.
Oh, 20. I think you're stretching. I agree with you that I think there are some. I think Willock you can get Bamian. I think Willock you can get 20 million for. I think that if you're lucky, you can get 20 million for Bellerin. If you look at his season and you look at the fact that he wants to go, and you look at the fact that we're in a pandemic, clubs are going to use all of them factors to try and lower that price down.
Nketiah's one.
Nketiah's got a year left on his deal. That's a tricky to go and get 20 million.
If Sheffield United could buy Rian Brewster for £24 million, then every single person.
Surely the fact that they did that is now alerting everyone to the facts that you shouldn't do that type of thing. I mean, we got offered 20 million for Mainsley and didn't take it when he was at the top of his game for us, and now he's played a season at West Brom and half a season for us that wasn't great, and the pandemic. So I see what you're saying. I think we have a lot of sellable assets, but I just don't know about the value.
Let's not forget, probably the player with the highest sell-on value that we've got right now has just returned to the club with a broken metatarsal, by the way, because he would have probably fetched you 20 to 25 million pound just based on the fact he's young and he's got a lot of potential. Okay, yeah, the attitude might knock 5 million off his price, but there's enough clubs in Europe that would want to take Matteo Guendouzi. But he's now injured, and there's another problem that you've got to deal with in the summer because he's going to return to the club. I think he's already back in London now, and he's
part of that clique.
Well, yeah, this is it, and I'm firmly in the camp that I would keep him because I still think there's a player there, but you have to manage him right, and that was a massive failure last summer. And if he is going to come back, and obviously we can't sell him injured, that metatarsal injury, realistically, you're looking at 4 to 5 months before he's properly match fit at the minimum.
Really?
That's without complications. So he's going to be around.
Surely the biggest sign that Arsenal turned around is us. Surely the biggest sign that Arsenal turned around is that we go from a club that buys players with broken bones to a team that sells players
them back.
with broken bones.
Absolutely. Yeah. All we need now is Saliba to get cropped in the last game of the Liga season, and we're back.
Go on, Chris. Sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
No. That's just to sort of draw a line under your point, under your question. Now, I just think the hierarchy is what's going to be key this summer, because if you really are going to back the manager, and I think the Cronkies and the ownership have got a really big decision to make. Like Mike said, I think it's now time. The words that Josh has used have been very pretty, and I actually think fair play to the guy. He came into that fans forum, and he could easily have been ripped to shreds in that. And I thought, whatever you think of the guy, I thought fair play. There's some brass tacks on him to come into that. But talk is cheap now. If Stan is making the decisions, that's fine, no problem. But Josh has put himself front and center as the spokesperson. I saw your tweet the other day, Tom, about saying that they've never been pictured together. Well, that needs to change. They need to get around a boardroom, even if it's in a mask, and they need to come up with a proper strategy this summer. And they need to be, to quote Arteta, ruthless. And that, for me, means stripping probably 7 or 8 of the first team out, first team squad out, and replacing them with, I'm not necessarily saying big names, but names of youth and names with potential and names that are actually going to hopefully allow Arteta to play a style of play that he has talked a lot about, but we're yet to see.
Yeah, I got a lot of stick for that tweet about the not being pictured, because obviously immediately people said that, there's been a pandemic on and there's travel restriction and all that. But the point of the fact is that we've employed a manager. Your club has employed a manager, and if you, Josh, is this guy that's come out and spoken time after time about how much he loves the club now and wants to be integrated and wants to be more involved, if you make a huge decision like that, if you're this billionaire, surely you can take a quick flight over to London, oversee that process, get involved and make yourself present, even in those first couple of months. I get that there's been a pandemic, but it's been 18 plus months now.
Well, and how many times have we seen troops fly from London to New York and back and forth and back and forth? I mean, at this point,
if Elton John can get in the Watford dressing room at the end of season awards, and I'm pretty sure Josh can get us. Come on, guys, seriously.
When he said that during the fan forum and with a straight face, he said that he was just about ready to start being in London more and so on, and then the pandemic hit. I'm like, well. He was getting ready for more fan engagement, and the club was going to do this, and then the pandemic hit. I was like, "Come on, man! I can see 3 of you who live at least across the Atlantic Ocean from me right now. I mean, you clearly haven't even bothered to do this. So that I don't know that Josh. he did not come off well to me in that fan forum. Yeah, it takes balls to face off against, you know, the kind of the anger that Akil and friends brought to that.
Akil was just,
you know, but he wasn't dealing with it very well. If you listen to the audio, he was like literally shutting down like a kid, like a teenage kid who's angry at their parents.
Yeah,
and someone must have nudged him like on WhatsApp or something and say, you better lighten up a little bit, because these one-word angry answers are not going to cut it. So
yeah, you can see it from the transcripts that he answered so many questions very, very bluntly, and that did come across as kind of dismissive. And the fact that, as you said, he didn't want to be there, it was very clear that he didn't want to.
The tone of his voice, even it was just like I'm getting mad, and
yes.
I was listening to it as it was happening. I had a little gerbil moment where I was able to listen to the call as it happened, and I wrote down like the exact point where he was like, Akil asked a question, he was like, yes, and I was like, this is about to go crazy, and then he lightened up a little bit. I think Vina tried to save him by jumping in, but yeah, that was was not a step in the right direction. But he did say some words that, you know, and if he holds to them this summer, then we'll see what happens.
The whole idea about kind of like, we want to do more fan engagement, and just saying that, and saying, what was it he said? That we were just about to do it, but then the pandemic hit. It's like, you've been around for years. Like, you've been here for years. And you're like, it's not a case of just saying, oh, we were just about to. We were going to announce this Super League fiasco, and then, we were going to jump into your living rooms and sit down for an episode of Gogglebox. Like, it wasn't going to happen. Like, so to believe that would be mental. But yes, everybody out, as Luke Howard says in the chat box. Unbelievable stuff, really. But we have to obviously...
From the time he put that in the chat box, I went out and had a shirt created that...
There you go. We have to kind of, though, we have to look forwards. I don't want to look forwards and trying to think. I don't want to just linger and just be a moaning session of what this is. And when I describe this as kind of an honest conversation about Arsenal Football Club, I want your honest views about where you think and how you think we go on from here. Because the reality is that Arteta is going to be here at the start of the season. The reality is that we're going to have a lot of these same players, because even though we feel that we need a massive overhaul and a massive surgery, is the word you use, Kris, is that the likelihood is that what we want and what arguably needs to happen is not going to be realistic for this summer window. And more needs to happen still behind the scenes with Richard Garlick coming out. I think it's good that we're emphasising kind of the backroom staff is getting a change, and maybe the Super League can be a bit of a blessing in disguise, a bit of a kick up the backside. Maybe we'll have to wait and see if the words that they told us are a load of rubbish or not. But Adam, when it comes down to kind of your vision of the summer and how Arsenal tackle this, what is it? What is it that you want to see? And be as unrealistic as you like, mate. I want to know your vision for the club and what you want to see the club do this summer.
I don't even know what ruthless means. What the first thing I like. I think
she was in the 55 redundancies. That's what we know, ruthless.
Ruth from accounting, she's been sacked off. I think I want honesty. That's what I want. I don't want links with players that are unrealistic. I don't want noise about us going after players that we're never going to get. I want transparency and I want openness. That's the very first thing. And I do want surgery to take place. I do want us finally to get rid of these fringe players that have been hanging around for ages, that have gone out on loan, that I thought were cast into the wilderness, and have all of a sudden come back and found a place in Arsenal's team. I want players who are clearly not good technically to be in our squad anymore. I want them gone. And I just want a nice core group of players that we know we can rely on in the biggest moments, who play consistently, who don't make mistakes, and who can get us back to, at the very least, the Europa League places without it being a fight. I don't want us maybe 30 games in to say, we're 4 points off the Europa League. We need another team to do us a favor. I want us to be in the Europa League at the very least by our own merit. And then going on from there, I want players to be excited about. I don't want to look at my midfield and think, meh. I want a team or a midfield pivot that I look at and I said, you know what? That is the apple of Real Madrid's eye. I wonder when they're going to come calling for one of our players. I want to be excited about Arsenal again. And I look at games and I'm just like, I'm going to watch because I support Arsenal. But if it weren't for my loyalty, I would not care. I don't want to do something else to watch Arsenal. I want to be able to sit down Saturday, think, yep, I'm locked in. Nothing else is important. Everything else is secondary. Arsenal are my focus right now, and that hasn't happened for a long time.
Now, I think that Adam doesn't want to see Elneny and Ceballos as a pivot next season.
There we go. Thank you.
Just to let me know if I've grasped your opinion correctly. No, I know what you're saying, and I love the way you use the words that you want our players to be the apple of Real Madrid's eye. And I feel like there is potential of some of them to be. Bukayo Saka, of course, and some of the youngsters that we're bringing through. I think there's the potential for that. But it has always been kind of the Achilles heel of this club to not seize the day, not build upon when there is potential there. You know, think back to the summer where only Petr Cech came in, for instance, that type of summer window. There is potential in this squad. We've seen it, I'll use that word again, bang, this season. We've seen it happen. We've seen what it's capable of. It is about consistency. So, Mike, what's your vision for this team in the summer?
Early
transfers, the T-shirt, of course.
Early transfers. None of this August 31st BS anymore. I mean, we need, and I know that there's a Euro this summer, but players have been signed before the summer tournaments in the past. They generally don't get right now. They don't generally well, and it's a Euro. It's not a World Cup, so I mean, it only applies to European players. But it just needs to be business taken care of instead of dithering. I mean, honestly, Thomas Partey, who knows how much of his maladjusted season was because he came in literally on the last day of the transfer window, which was even later than it normally would have been because of the late start to the season. I mean, I think it was mid-September by the time he came in. He gets hurt. He's, I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. And a lot of that's attributed to just dithering by Arsenal. No one else was in for him. He had a release clause. Whatever the stories were from the Bell about it. I mean, it didn't go down the way that it should have gone down. So early transfers. Happy to bring in some Premier League ready players. I mean, Basuma, more than what I've seen out of him, because I really don't watch a lot of Brighton matches. He clearly knows how to play in the Premier League. He requires no adjustment. He would seem a logical addition to our midfield. And so, why would that transfer need to wait until the last days of the transfer window? That's not how the other teams generally do it. So that's my vision is just to overhaul this team, show intent. Don't wait around for things to fall in your lap and then they don't. Yeah. Don't wait on a player and watch him go to one of our supposed rivals who are now leaving us in their dust, and make a statement of intent. I mean, we're not buying Jack Grealish, but we could easily buy people who are, at the verge of becoming world-class or near world-class players. And if we have to sell them on because they're too good for us in 2 or 3 years, which I hope won't be the case, so be it. We need to get there first.
Yeah. It's a case of, I don't expect Thomas Partey's in every position. The Basuma one is a great shout. And to bring your point in about kind of the getting them in early, like imagine this season if Chelsea had Thomas Tuchel from the start and they brought through, they'd already got in Ziyech and Werner. They both came in well before the season started.
Could have potentially won the Champions League if they did that.
Arguably, they could have potentially won the championship this season if they'd have had Tuchel in from the start. I know, and I'm not the biggest advocate of him for Arsenal. I think he's very suits that group of players that he's got at Chelsea, especially with kind of the links with some of those that are there. And I think it will take a different type of manager to take Arsenal forwards eventually when Arteta's time maybe runs out. Or, maybe it's him. Who knows? Unlikely at this stage. But it is about getting stuff done early. It's about being a little bit more mature, I think is the word in the transfer window, and not like a kid on a FIFA game on transfer deadline day where you can click the button to go for every hour of the window trying to sign a new player. But it needs to be done in a more professional way. And maybe, as we talked about earlier, the executives coming in change that. Now, Kris, does your vision involve a certain Ren midfielder coming into the club in any way, shape or form?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Martin Terrier. Always have been. Yeah, I mean,
Chris was the first person to ever say the word Mbappe to me when he was like 12 and Wenger was having coffee with his mom. But I'll always remember that you're like, there's this new kid that's coming up that's going to be really good one day. He's killing Mbappe. And then you used like his last name, which I thought was Mbappe, but there was something else after that.
Kylian Mbappe Lotin. Yeah.
Yeah, Lotin. Yeah.
I remember those.
I was like, what does this guy know about French football?
Who is this fraud? Yeah, I mean, for clarity, I probably get more wrong than I get right, so I can't take all the credit on that one. But yeah, I think Eduardo Camavinga is a wonderfully talented young player, and there's two scales of thought on this one. One is, for me, the only reason we're being linked with him at the moment is because he's had a shocking season. And I don't say that kind of lightly, but if he'd have had the season that he had when he broke through, which garnered him 3 French national team caps, it got him a lovely new boot deal, and he was the toast of Rennes, and very much at the time when Julien Stéphan was the Rennes manager, they were in the Champions League, they were playing sort of free-flowing, expansive football. And then they had a spell at the start of the season where it just all went wonky, and Rennes' form fell off a cliff. They lost a number of games. Obviously, went out the Champions League very early, and it was their first time in the Champions League, so it was a very brief kind of drop into that. And with that, Camavinga's stock, I wouldn't say plummeted, but it definitely went off the radar. He wasn't being talked about half as much as he was previously. Of course, you have to throw in the pandemic as well, because Real Madrid were very keen on him, and the talk was that they would go for Mbappe at the same time as Camavinga and pair the two together, and that's very unlikely to happen now. So the idea that Camavinga would cost a team in the region of sort of 50 to 60 million, which he would have done, I think now realistically you're probably looking in the 25 to 30 million pound bracket, which for me is still unattainable for Arsenal right now, because that's basically our budget for the summer, I think. Obviously, I don't know that for a guarantee's sake, but I think without sales, I think we're spending maximum 30, 35 million this summer. Even with sales, I don't think we're spending much more than that. And the problem you've got is that the minute you go after a player like Camavinga, you're going to immediately get into a bidding war. And I genuinely think that he would attract the interest of clubs that are in and around us, but on a higher plane. I think if you think that Liverpool potentially might lose Gini Wijnaldum this summer, he's a very, very good fit for that role, potentially for a Liverpool side. He would slot into that quite nicely. Manchester United are probably going to move on Donny van de Beek this summer, which is kind of hilarious. Fred was never really good enough for them. Maybe they might have a look, although I suggest that they might be spending their money elsewhere. That's just 2 English clubs. He would probably be a Pep type of player if Pep didn't have the midfield he's got, but I don't think he really need him. And then as far as the European market, he's very unlikely to stay in France. I think that's fair. And if he does, PSG would be the only club that he would go to. But I think there's plenty of teams in Germany and a few in Spain that will have a look at him. And I know that Nabil Fekir's success in Betis has turned a lot of French players' sort of eyes in terms of the Spanish league. There was this little bit of, you know better than I do, Tom, but there was a bit of an element of, do French players really succeed in Spain? Because Griezmann was the only one that really stood out.
Yeah, changing.
Yeah, it is changing massively.
I like Kevin Gamera. I think he's done really well since.
Gamera's brilliant.
Ben Yedder did all right at Sevilla as well. So
Ben Yedder basically transformed his career. I mean, he was really doing not very much, and he had that season at Sevilla, and probably could have got a bigger move than Monaco, if truth be told. But yeah, I sit in the camp of I can't see it happening. I hate to pee on people's fireworks, but I don't think
people have their expectations too high.
No. And do you know what it smacks of as well? It smacks of an agent looking at his client and going, I'd really like to move my player out of a club like Rennes. I'd really like quite a big move. Who can I use as a big club as leverage to get the other clubs involved? Oh, I know Arsenal aren't doing very well. Let's drop their name into it. And it just reminds other clubs that actually this kid is potentially available. And make no mistake, as much as I love watching the French league, 99% of the players that play in France are available for transfer at the right price. So he will go. I don't doubt that, but I'd be very, very surprised if he ends up in North London, either red or white side.
There you go. So if you needed any more information on Camavinga, then there you go. It's all there.
I love Danny's comment in the chat.
What's he said? What's he saying?
Danny and I are like an old married couple because he read the look on my face while you guys were having that conversation perfectly. I'm like, this is the part of the podcast where I don't even have to worry about Tom going to me for my opinion on this because I don't have 161 hours a week to watch other leagues football. So.
So you're saying we have nothing to do?
Every time I see you, you're in front of that moving background, so you have to be doing something with your time.
Yes. And if you ask Danny who he was, he'd say, "Who's this camel finger?" Danny wouldn't even know how to say his name. So there you go.
Deary me. Right, we are moving on to the section of the show where we go through as many of your questions as feasibly possible. So if you do have one for the guys, please make sure you put them into the chat. Use the capital Q so I can see them much more easily amongst the mess throughout the chat box. So let's crack on with what you guys are talking about. Scroll up to where we've got the newest ones. Here we go. Adam, Matt G says, what reason will Arteta give for not starting Martinelli for the rest of the season? A, tactical, B, injury, or C, he hates him?
Matthew, it has to be C. I do not understand why he's not playing that young man. I don't get it. I've tried making the same excuses for him. So maybe it's this. No, I don't know anymore, bro. I don't know. I'm sorry. Maybe he does hate him.
Fair enough. Lenny, who, to be honest, anyone called Lenny, I can't help but picture Lenny from The Simpsons. I don't know why. It just always comes to my mind.
See, this is a generational thing. I think of Lenny and Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley.
I'm sure someone younger than me will be able to name a different Lenny from some very PC children's program that's out today. Lenny says, honestly, guys, do you think that we have seen the best years of Arsenal? This is to you, Mike, by the way. I'm very afraid that we have, and I really don't see a way back from this with the current management.
We have seen the very best years of Arsenal, as in, like, we're now a mid-table club.
Do you think that we'll ever see the likes of what we'd seen when we were fighting for championships, even arguably a consistent top four club? Do you think we'll ever get back to those heights?
I could see us getting back to being a consistent top four club, but I just think the game has changed so much that if the game doesn't have some sort of reckoning, what financial fair play was, I thought, supposed to do. Arsenal was always planning to basically be standing on the top of the mountain when after the earthquake, and the earthquake just keeps getting postponed, and as a result, we're still at the bottom of the mountain, and so I don't know that. I mean, I don't know how you can win a championship in this league without a tremendous amount of luck in selling players or a tremendous amount of money to throw around. I mean, it's just it's changed. So under this ownership, under this financial situation that the league is in, where countries are owning teams and billionaires spending billions of dollars of their own money on it, I don't see it. That doesn't mean that we can't challenge. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be, putting our mindset to fourth place. Do I think that we're going to be seeing regular 8th, 9th, and 10th place finishes? No. I think this is a blip. But competing for championships,
Adam's face. Are you sure?
No, I do still hold on to the fact that this is the worst it gets, in my opinion. And you can clip that and play it on loop next season when we're playing massive 6-pointers in the relegation battle in April. But I think this is the worst it gets. I think this is our 1995, which doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go hire an unknown manager to take over the club. But
that's why we are where we are, Mike.
I think I got this great idea. We should hire Kovac. I don't know where I got that idea from in all caps, but I think we really need to hire.
You actually picked up on that. I don't get, like, in the chat box, like, I don't understand. You got a lot of people putting across their points of view, and there's always this one person that's like, you must hear what I'm saying. Here's the capital letters. It's just Just
I was
write
going to comment
normally.
about it at the time, but I didn't want to ruin the. I never interrupt anyone on a podcast, so I
Very quickly, Kris. Kovac, Monaco. I mean, I wasn't that impressed with him at Dortmund, at Bayern Munich, but is he been good? I know they're in the title race arguably this season, but is he one to look at?
He's been brilliant. I mean, I'm like you. I saw him coming in and I looked at it and I thought this is going to go one of two ways. He's either going to come in and it's going to be a massive failure and he's going to be one of those managers where you look back in 10 years and go, oh yeah, he managed Bayern Munich and he's now managing like Bromsgrove Rovers or something. But no, to his immense credit, he's done really, really well. He also has his brother, if I'm not mistaken, who's on the coaching staff there. And yeah, he's transformed that Monaco.
You're saying we should get him instead?
Yeah, get his brother in. Yeah, get his brother in.
So Kovac just the guy that was managing Munich when they came to LA to play against Arsenal.
Was he?
Yeah, I was in the press conference that day. That was the time that my alarm went off in the press conference, and he came in first before Unai Emery did, and so yeah,
I love that story. I mean, there's probably a lot more listeners now. So please retell that story for the listeners that don't know. When Mike was in a press conference and he set his alarm for soup. God, tell the story.
So all right, so summer of 2019, I was on a mad diet. I lost let me convert this into stone. Lost almost 5 stone in 3 months, and part of the diet was I ate every 3 hours. I ate like a protein bar or like a shake, like a low-cal chocolate shake, and at 6 p.m. I would eat soup, or 9 p.m.
Who eats soup? Like, soup's a liquid, bro.
I drink a soup in one of these little containers because I'm back on that diet again. So anyway, I stopped the diet when I went to Denver for that summer tour because I'm like, I'm not going to be drinking soups, at these games. And I had my alarm set for 12, 3, 6, and 9. And we somehow, Andy and I talked our way into getting media passes for this tour. And we're in LA at the stadium the night before the game. I think they had just done an open practice, and Unai Emery and Granit Xhaka are sitting at the table, and I'm just following. I see Arsblog, I see James Bent. Everyone puts their phones up at the table and hits the voice memo so that they can record it. So I do the same thing. Thing starts at 5:58 p.m. and stupid ass unmagic Mike forgets to turn his alarm off, and literally the first question that's asked, all of a sudden Unai's going, someone's phone. There's video of it that I have, which is, I don't
think that sounds like Unai Emery, Mike. I'm going to be honest.
He was just like, and so I had to do the walk of shame in front of the whole Arsenal staff, in front of all the press and media. Sophie was there, and she was laughing her ass off at me.
Was Granit Xhaka the player?
Yeah, Granit Xhaka was sitting there, and you could see this old-looking fat guy, balding. You can see me walk up, take my phone away, and Granit Xhaka shoots me a look like I will kill him. But, yeah, so soup has been a big part of my life for the last few years, apparently.
Unbelievable scenes.
Got the kettle to show for it, But yeah, that.
Oh, dearie me. Brilliant stuff. Fantastic stuff. Next question. Chris P. This is to Kris from Kris. Says, our youngsters are the only shining light right now, especially those from the academy. They're the ones who must have this club in their heart. Do you agree? And if so, do you keep the likes of Joe Willock and Mainsley?
One of the two, yeah. And I know we disagree on this one, Tom, but yeah, for me, I do agree with Chris's point. I think he makes a good point. The youngsters are pretty much the shining light. They're certainly the ones that we need to work hard to keep around. I thought Andrew made a really good point on our blog today when he was talking about Willian, unfortunately, and he was saying the Reece Nelson debate. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think Reece Nelson is the second coming of Messi at all, but he was sort of essentially saying that if you'd have given the same minutes to Reece Nelson as you'd given to Willian, would it have been that much different? And I genuinely don't think it would have been. In fact, I think you probably would have got a little bit more out of a player who, it means a little bit more to, and is at a time of his career where even if it's not at Arsenal, he'd want to make an impression to get a move elsewhere, as he did when he went on loan to Hoffenheim. So, yeah, I do think you need to invest in the youth. We mentioned earlier on, but Saliba's another one that if we don't give that kid a first team shirt next year, somebody needs shooting at the club if we sell him. But seriously, that I know I'm slightly biased from the league he's from, but he's got everything that
no
we
foul
need right
language
now.
on this podcast, but lots of violence.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Super violence is what the podcast will be called.
Shooting with rubber bullets, of course, rubber bullets. But yeah, I mean, he should be put in. And for me, Joe Willock, I just see a player there. Again, is he a player that is going to be elite level? Probably not. But I know not everyone agrees with this. I never thought Aaron Ramsey was elite level. I thought he was a very decent central midfielder who got you a decent amount of goals and spent a long period of time injured.
He's proving that at Juventus.
I mean, yeah, the fact that he's potentially coming back, and that's not a slate on him. He's a very talented midfielder, as was Jack Wilshere, unfortunately with injuries. But I just feel that Willock deserves an opportunity to play the games, and I don't think you'd get anything less out of him, playing him than you would have playing some of the players. I love Mo Nene, but would there be a huge amount of difference? Different roles, I get that. So I would keep him. Maitland-Niles is a different one because I get it. I get that he's talented, but I don't think he's quite as talented as maybe he thinks he is. And I certainly don't think he's good enough as a midfielder at a sort of a high-end club. I think you can do that at West Brom when you're basically fighting the drop and you're going down basically. I think as a backup fullback, I think he's missed an opportunity. I think he could easily have taken Hector Bellerin's spot this year comfortably, and he chose to persist with the role that he feels he's better in. Fair play to him, but that's the reason he's at West Brom now and not at Arsenal. So I'd cash in with him. I'd cash in on Nketiah, but yeah, I'd keep Willock. And I'd like to see a couple. Nelson, I think I would probably move on. At the very least, I'd say to him, maybe give him pre-season and see what he's got. Because, who'd have thought Smith Rowe would have been integral to the first team last pre-season? Saka, you could see it. But Smith Rowe, you thought he might get the European games, but he's played a lot more than any of us would have thought. So, and there's a few in the youth academy. Aziz is probably the biggest one that everyone's talking about. I'd like to see him involved. And the kid at Swindon has done really well, hasn't he? Or he played at Blackpool, Matt Smith, yeah. So, chuck him into pre-season if pre-season exists this year. I don't know if it does or not. But, give him an
we're playing a game against we're playing the derby of that asshole racist.
Yes, we are. We're playing we're avenging the incident at Ibrox is what we're doing.
Oh, Rangers, of course. Yes. Yeah. And that was the weirdest link of all time, the Glenn Kamara link last week.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I've actually got a tactical breakdown and in plans coming up, so that'll be interesting.
God bless him, but really? So, no, I think it's a great point, Chris. And, yeah, the youth is the way that at the end of the day, if they're Arsenal, you're going to cheer for them, even if they don't get it right, you're going to back them.
True.
Yeah, you always want to see them score. I think that what I think Arsenal have ultimately failed to do of late with the youth is I think recognise that you need to continue kind of the cycle. I feel like Nketiah has been given too many chances, and we should have moved on to say Balogun before. And I hope we don't make that same mistake with some of the other youngsters that come through because there's some really exciting kids going through. I pray that we can tie it down. Kido Taylor-Hart, he's a really interesting one to be keeping your eye on as well. Kurjan, the young Romanian kid as well, is a really interesting one to look at. Of course, we know all about Balogun and
Muller.
He's about Muller, who of course joined us from Malmo in Sweden and is very highly rated. We spoke to his former coach on the pod and he's very, very highly rated, believe it or not. So there's some interesting guys coming through and you should keep your eye on them for sure. Let's go, Adam, for Jashar, who says, question, can you really see us splashing out? We still have to pay back that £120 million loan. Quickly, though, Jashar, what I'll say is that you don't need to worry about that. That's completely separate. Says, with no European football, and then they're supposed to be splashing out in the summer. The question simply, Adam, do you see us going for a big, big summer window?
No, Jashar, I do not.
You can elaborate more if you like.
Yeah, no, I will do. I will. I think I can see it being busy and not necessarily for bringing in players, probably for getting more players out, probably for having links to certain players as well. But I don't think we're going to splash out, especially in how I understand the term. I don't see us going out and spending big on 2 or 3 players. I think it will be small little fixes. Maybe one player that gets us excited, but other than that, no, I don't see us splashing out because it's just not the Arsenal way, is it? Really.
Speaking of splashing, what are you drinking, Tal?
I am drinking. I was waiting for you to ask this question. I genuinely was. How long is it going to ask to recognise? There's a funny coloured drink. No, this. I'm going to try not to sound too feminine when I say this, but that is a blood orange gin, mate, and it's very nice.
I thought it was Iron Brew. I'm not going to lie.
Is it indigenous?
Can you imagine drinking Iron Brew in this glass?
That's a fancy guy.
I'm telling you, the man is almost ready for retirement. I mean, he's an OAP in disguise.
I love a gin. I'm not shameful about it at all. I enjoy a gin and tonic. It's
just you be, man.
You also enjoy a Jack Daniels and
JD Honey. Yes, is very nice with a lemonade.
And then when you have one, you end up like this.
Very true. How long does it take you to find that picture?
I have it in its own compartment.
You have a Tom folder in your phone, is what you.
I have a Tom Canton folder in my phone.
Let's just say that picture. We are in Highbury. There, we're staying in one of the apartments.
You were literally nude on the north bank of Highbury. Finally, you got.
Hold on, I was never naked in an apartment with you.
I see no clothing in this picture. Well, okay, maybe there's a little.
Clearly, there's a t-shirt.
Hint of a t-shirt there, but other than that.
I would not sleep with at least 7 layers on if I was the same place. Deary me. Let's move on to the next question, which comes from Abhishek, Mike, who says, has Arteta improved any player in his tenure with us? I think this is one quality that he lacks, player development / management.
He's improved Emi Martinez. No, there's, I mean, it depends on whether you want to attribute this to him or not, but there are players who have improved over the last year. And Bukayo Saka has improved over the last year. I don't put that down to Arteta. Pepe has improved over the last 6 months. Our defenders in general aren't making the same stupid mistakes as often as they used to. So, yeah, I mean, but again, you never know whether that's coaching or a natural progression of a person's career. You can certainly look at players who have regressed, but that's been happening. Like I was saying in the chat, that's been happening ever since, Arsene Wenger was here. You'd see guys come in, be lights out, and then regress. I think almost everyone that he brought in did that, with the exception of Alexis Sanchez. So, man management is more important to me than anything else, and that's where he's fallen short. But sure, players have certainly improved in their tenure under Arteta. I don't think he's making players worse. I think he is expecting things out of them that they're not used to having to do. But I reject that he's making players worse just because some of our players have regressed over the last season. I don't think that that's on Arteta.
Fair enough. Dion Gene says, do you think we should have kept Mislintat, Kris, to attract good youngsters? And do you scouting-based recruitment rather than super agent-based deals via Kia Jarabchik?
I mean, I don't like the Kia Jarabchik thing. I'll put my sort of foot firmly in the sand on that one. Not a fan of the super agents thing, but you know what? It's the modern era. It's kind of the way business works now, and it's that kind of, if you can't beat them, you got to join them. Sometimes you have to get into bed with the devil. That's just the way it is. So I kind of get it, but I'm not a fan of it. As regards Mislintat, I think it's a little bit of revisionism, to be honest. I think it's very easy to say now, oh, we shoulda, coulda, woulda. I think if Mislintat had come in under the regime now, it would have been very different to the one that he came in with at the time, if that makes sense. The one that I think we really missed was, you probably appreciate this one, Tom, is Monchi. And I know that some people say, oh, yeah, but, a lot of people say, oh, he's made some bad signings too. I said, yeah, absolutely. But at least Yeah, exactly. I would agree with you. I don't think he has, but some people would say he has. But he's
I'd say
just
who hasn't. As I said, it's like, who hasn't made a bad signing here or
yeah,
there?
exactly. And everybody makes mistakes, but on the whole, his reputation is that of a very, very good acquisitioner. That's not even a word, is it? I've made it up. But hey ho,
Acquirer. Is it
acquirer? That's the word. There we go. We'll go with that one. He acquires top talent. So I think that's probably the one we missed out on. But yeah, I mean, as for attracting good young players, I think if you're a young professional, you don't join a club like Arsenal because they've got a lovely director of young players. You join a club like Arsenal because you're ambitious and you quite fancy a 12th place finish. I'm joking.
Join to play for Steve Bold is what you do.
That's what you do. Exactly. Who wouldn't want to do that? And you join to see Little Vic and the Acres. No. Yeah, I think you join a club like Arsenal because you back yourself as a young player. You don't necessarily join just because your favourite coach is there. So, yeah, he's doing a very, very good job, I should say, at Stuttgart, isn't it? But
yes.
Yeah, I think it's all a little bit woulda, coulda, shoulda,
Yeah, I do kind of wish that we've been able to kind of see it through in a way and see what could have happened maybe with him there. And it was a short period, and obviously the combination of him and Raul was never going to work. You bring in someone that loves to identify hidden gems and bring players through with someone that is all about agents and bringing in these big kind of personalities, and it's just not a mix that's going to happen. And obviously it's led us down a path where eventually both of them are left, so we know that it didn't work. P Trim in the chat says, Tom, I've heard the term sticking to our values at Arsenal. As an overseas fan, can you explain what it means in the context of moving forwards? I mean, Kris and Mike, who have obviously been Arsenal fans longer than me, may be able to correct me if I say anything wrong, if they believe there's anything extra. Adam, of course, feel free to chip in as well. But in my view, and from like supporting Arsenal, basically 2 halves of my life being I suppose 2 halves is probably a little bit harsh, but maybe 2/3 was very much what I looked at as maybe the Arsenal values, and the Arsene Wenger tenure showed that off quite a lot in trying to play good football and trying to do things in an honest way, in signing players and developing them. And sometimes you sell them on, sometimes you keep them and they develop at the club, and also the spirit of the game comes into it. Like, I can't see an Arsenal that was the value of Arsenal being represented in a club that would go into a Super League, for instance. I don't look at that as the value of Arsenal and what I associate with Arsenal in any way. I look at it as a club that has tried to do things as best as possible in previous times in the right way. And that has been lost. I think that it is, what I will say, to play devil's advocate to that whole argument, in 2021, it is very difficult for a club, I feel, at the top of the game in the European stage, to stick to what you would describe as values if you want to have continual success.
It's impossible.
I mean, you might be looking at Man City and what they've done, and they've spent money and they've brought in some really good players. But I mean, their owners, you can look into the backgrounds, it's not a pretty reading. The closest I can look to is Liverpool, for the way that they've obviously recruited, sold really well, bought really well, play good football, have brought in a good coach, stuck by him in some difficult times and reaped the rewards of it. But I mean, you look behind their owners, it's not all going to be sunshine and roses either. It's very, very difficult. I mean, Mike, is there anything I've kind of missed that you think Arsenal values are associated with the club and what we used to have for an overseas fan perspective?
Yeah, to me, I'm going to go the complete opposite of the things that you're talking about. I'm just going to talk about how you treat people in the club, in other clubs. I mean, there are some people, Ken Fryer, amongst them. Arsene Wenger clearly had this in him as well. But I mean, it goes well back before 1996 of the club being more involved in the community, more of a beacon of Islington rather than a business in Islington, and people were treated appropriately. Arsenal's always been at the forefront of ethnic and racial and religious awareness and fairness. And, I mean, every club has, unfortunate things in their fan base, but, Arsenal have never been the club that have been, noted as being troublesome in those areas, which, I think speaks a lot. I think we're losing all of that because the generation of people who were stewards of the Arsenal way and the Arsenal values are all either dying out or being forced out by the current ownership group, and they have just demonstrated on the largest stage of them all that they don't understand what the values at Arsenal are. Even if there's not a 10 commandments of Arsenal values, or as we call them here in the U.S., the Constitution. We won the war, by the way. No, we don't have that, and so it's kind of left to the individual to define what sticking to our values means. I can tell you that we haven't been. The redundancies, literally as silly as it is, the Gunnersaurus thing. If you know the story behind that, they got rid of the guy, not the outfit, and they brought back the outfit, but not the guy. Saving them what? Almost getting rid of Mark Brindle, supporters club liaison and a true Arsenal man who was really the most important link between the club and its supporters groups overseas and in England. It shows. I'm not answering P. Trim's question because I don't know how we move forward. But the values at Arsenal, the stories that we've heard from ex-players and from journalists who have, followed the club, longer than you've been alive, are examples of what is missing now. When you hear Kev Campbell and Alan Smith and Lee Dixon talk about how the club was back in the 80s and 90s and even before that, it almost makes me cry that the club is just not that club anymore. Not having any Arsenal DNA on the board. In fact, actively pushing them away. It's not the same club, and that's what worries me the most. But then I'm not going anywhere though. They're not going to lose me. I was going
to say, just to follow up on that, would you take success if it meant that there's more of an erosion of Arsenal's identity or culture?
That's an excellent question, and short term, it feels great, but if we had, I don't know what that would mean necessarily, because at this point, taking success is really just about paying a crap load of money and putting a bunch of Galacticos out there and winning. With rare exceptions, the Leicester City season, for example. But so, I don't know what we would have to do against our values to achieve success in the short term. But ultimately, no, I'm not a guy who wants to win at all costs. There are costs sometimes to winning. And, that's just perspective of an old man who's lived through some stuff and sporting and non-sporting. And I'd rather be proud of my club than lift up a champion's scarf and feel like we've just brought ourselves down to the level of a Chelsea or a Manchester City. And it's easy to say that when we're not winning things, but no, I don't think I would. The dream is to be able to do both.
Kris?
I couldn't really say a lot more than what Mike said there, because I just think he summed that up perfectly. And the point Adam made as well about, the idea of what do you trade, what do you lose to gain success? Chelsea have won a Champions League, but I still remember them as the team that had cars parked behind the goal. So you can buy success. And one thing that I must admit I took a little bit of umbrage at, a certain tweet that I saw from
was it mine?
Actually, it wasn't, but it was from a chap Mike knows pretty well, actually, and he was talking about Chelsea. I'll just leave that one there. But it was just such a strange.
How did it take you that long?
No, it was such a strange tweet because it got so much.
Again, you're talking about guns. This is the second time in one podcast.
I apologize. It got so much traction and positive responses from our so-called fans, and I was like, what? And I hate to sort of paintbrush with the youth, etc. But I can only think that it was a lot of fans. Maybe, even younger than you, Tom. I can only sort of think of it as people that have just grown up not knowing any Chelsea under any other different ownership, or to a lesser degree Man City. We still, whatever success Chelsea have got, you still have to remember that they are run by a guy with a very, very shady past, who a lot of people still don't really know a lot about. A guy who, could easily have bought ourselves, Spurs or Fulham before he sort of stumbled across Chelsea. He wasn't picky. And he has essentially brought that club into the shape it's in now. Has he made a positive influence? Yes. But when Chelsea fans look back on this in 10, 20, 30, 40 years when he's gone, and they're probably 12th in the table.
They'll be 12th in League One.
Well, yeah, exactly. And
because they'll have a £2 billion loan that they have to pay back.
Precisely. And that's where, I do understand people that may not like Man United, and I'm not a huge fan, but I'm certainly not a fan of their modern day ownership with the Glazers. But they were a club that, okay, they had a lot of money because they were smart in business. They got good sponsorship deals. They had a wealth of success under probably one of the greatest managers of all time. They brought through a lot of young players at a good time, but they built on that, and they built the club, and they built that reputation over.
They're a self-sustaining club. No one ever talks about that they're self-sustaining. I mean, in fact, they're the opposite. Their owners pull money out of the club on a regular basis
to take it. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, and it's the argument that it's the stick that will always beat the likes of PSG and Man City. They're essentially country-owned clubs. But then, if somebody came in and said, there's a lot of talk about this Daniel Ek bid, I'm a bit uncomfortable with it myself. But I think if you surveyed 100,
I'm interested.
What am I uncomfortable with it?
Yeah,
I'm uncomfortable with the idea that this guy is. I'm not disputing that he's a fan, not at all. But I question how much of this is based around his fandom, and how much of it is this based on he sees us as an opportunity. And I think it's very PR. I think it's, there's a reason he leaked it on social media. There's a reason he's got involved with the Invincibles. There's a reason that this sort of 1.8 billion is coming up. I don't like the idea that he's having to bring other people in to finance it. He can sit there and tell us that he can afford the club till he's blue in the face. And until Swiss Ramble tweets it, I ain't believing it. And I just don't. I'm just a bit uncomfortable with the idea that the minute our fans get a bit upset about the ownership, they have been upset for a long time, but the minute they protest it, all of a sudden this tweet drops out of nowhere going, well, I wouldn't mind that, and then there's the whole Spotify thing. Talk to anybody in the music industry. I only know one person fairly high profile in the music industry, and he's not elite level. He's just earning a living from it. And he's shown me how much he's earned from Spotify. It ain't a lot.
I haven't earned anything for our podcast being on Spotify. I mean, I don't know why I want this guy to own our club. He hasn't paid me, squat.
I think
he's paid me exactly what I'm worth, but that's not the point.
What I don't want to happen, Chris, is I don't want because I know that what happens obviously sometimes is because of the absolute vitriol that the fan base has towards Kroenke, and quite rightly, I should add, that it's very well placed, that any kind of not defense of him, because you weren't defending Kroenke in any way, but what you were doing was pointing out some of the concerns we have with his opposition, which can be construed by some as a defense indirectly of the current ownership, which it isn't. I think that people just need to be very much more aware of the situation than the kind of, and be a little bit more savvy and street smart to this, to be honest.
Yeah. The big issue I have, I'll keep this really short because I don't want to drone on. The biggest issue I have at the moment is that if you go on Twitter, and I appreciate the majority of our fan base are not on Twitter, it's not the majority, but if you go on Twitter or any social media, all of a sudden everyone is a financial expert now. Everybody knows everything about every company. Everybody will tell you who the right ownership of this club should be, and everybody will tell you about the reasons why Kroenke should go, and why person X, person Y, and person Z is a better owner. The truth is, only people in the industry actually understand it. 99% of these people haven't even done a business MVQ, let alone have any sort of qualification or background to speak about it in any sense or reasoning. And the biggest point of all of this is I don't think that most of our fan base would be happy at all unless it's Nigel, who owns the chippy on Highbury Hill, that buys Arsenal. Nobody's going to be happy unless it's a local bloke from good old North London who's going to play all the kids and he's going to put all the money in. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think you're ever going to please everyone. And that's why I feel like we should kind of just step back and say, we'll support whoever's on the pitch, we'll support whoever wears the club kits. And if we're not happy with the ownership, we'll vent. But ultimately, we'll let people who actually know what they're doing make the decisions.
Who does Elon Musk support? We could be Dogecoin United right now.
I mean, arguably, like, no matter who comes in, not just to play devil's advocate, whoever comes in is going to have to be an absolute, huge rich person in the billions of pounds. Are there any what you describe?
All right, I'll do it. You have me
Andy to do it. Andy,
with your Spotify money.
Is there any billionaires out there that we can't turn around and say, like, they're not going to be clean necessarily? And in the chat box, in the chat box, someone said, I'm going to try and find it. Mark Bakridan says, so Eck is worse than Kroenke, as a question. And that's why I pointed out, I wanted to clarify what you were saying, Kris. But like, there is no one in my mind that can come in and has like a clean slate. And so I guess the devil's advocate is going to be, if Daniel Eck is just different, is it worth doing? And I see what you're saying, Kris, and I think it's a completely fair point to outline the concerns that we have over this person. To be fair, I'm not the biggest fan often of the AST and some of the people that are involved in it, but I was impressed by the fact that Tim Payton turned around to Andrew and said, look, we've not endorsed this bid yet because we don't know anything enough about it and we need to go down a government route and everything. And they very much learned from the whole Kroenke takeover to not trust things on face value. So I was impressed by that. But Adam, I'll bring you in on this, and this is kind of where we're going to round off the show, I suppose, is that, do you feel that, like, at the moment it's just better to cut the cord? It might be a big kind of sponsorship, it might be a big publicity stunt, is the better words to use, but is different, no matter what different is, better than what we have right now?
I wouldn't necessarily say that different just for different sake is the best thing. I think, as much as it might be a publicity stunt, the fact that he's trying to get the Invincibles on board, the fact that he's trying to win over Arsenal fans, I think is a good sign. It's effectively everything that Stan Kroenke or KSE isn't doing, and it's what a lot of people have been crying out for. So if he's trying to woo me, it's working. I'll put it that way, and I don't. Even though it's quite transparent.
You said that word before, Adam. Woo. Has that ever come into your vocabulary?
It definitely has.
The Ric Flair of podcasting.
Even though it's transparent, I can see what he's doing. I don't mind it, and I'm going to let it happen to me because I think it could. How much worse could it get? Put it that way.
Fair enough. That's a dangerous question to ask, mate. And probably a nice place to finish too. Thank you so much, everyone that's tuned in and listened to the show today. We really appreciate all of you that have tuned in. There's been fair hundreds of you to tune in and give us a load of comments and questions, and we appreciate all of you. If you could appreciate us by dropping a like on the video, of course, and giving the guys a follow on social media. Kris, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show, mate. Really appreciate your time. Tell people where they can find you on the socials.
Anytime, Tom. Yeah, happy to be here, and anytime you want somebody to just come on and have a moan, I'm always available.
Defend Kroenke.
Yeah, oh Christ, don't say that. I'll be lynched. I'm at AFC Freddy 8 on Twitter, and if you do have a penchant for French football, if you go to @the FH podcast, I am the host of French Football Weekly. We just released our most recent episode, recorded today, so enjoy that should you wish.
Is your favorite ex-Arsenal player Jermaine Ponon?
Ponon, yes. Penchant for Ponon. I should also, sorry, just very quickly, I should also mention I am, of course, part of the Bergkamp Wonderland. I know you mentioned that on the off, Tom, but yes, big up to Danny. I have to contractually say that, otherwise Danny doesn't pay me in Spotify coins. So there you go.
There you go. Daniel Eck could be knocking at your door. Thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate your time. Mike, always a pleasure, even though you revealed behind the curtain pictures of me on your phone, which I know I might be incriminating. Who knows?
I didn't tell anyone what you were doing when I took that picture. So
trying to sleep with a bad hangover.
That's true.
I had a hangover before I slept. It was that bad.
I must run because we are doing our podcast in 1 minute. So if you're looking for more podcast action, head over to the Gooners pod. We're having someone that you both know very well. A certain Jason Davies will be joining us for what we're calling a hate cast, because every time we have him on, it turns into, you know what I hate, you know who I hate, and we're just going to do that for an hour straight today. The 5 of us,
2 of them are sitting right here.
yeah, and it's going to be fun. So head over at the Gooners Pod. Tom, always a pleasure. Appreciate it. Keep kicking ass at what you do. Don't know really where I was headed with that.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate your time.
And Adam, it's great to pod with you as well.
And you too, sir.
Appreciate you laughing at my stupid jokes.
Mike's taking the words right away. Thank you ever so much for coming on. Awesome as always. Tell people where they can find you.
You can find me at TFO Show and on the Football Terrace. And I'm hoping I can kick some ass too, man.
There you go. You can find Adam on the Football Terrace, where he referred to me as Tom from the Arsenal talk today, which I appreciated massively. Which is fantastic. Great. Fantastic stuff.
Oh, and if you want to see the Granit Xhaka staring a mud hole in me with me going up to take my phone, we'll be kicking the podcast off with that. So
he doesn't care about copyright, so you can
it's not copyrighted, it's me, so I get to do
Fair enough. Very true. We will see you again tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. for the transfer show. It's been a pleasure to speak to you as always, and as always, up the Arsenal.